a place of balance. So I'm going to just veer a little bit over to the idea of disconnection. When disconnection happens, that's sometimes when we get the big feelings, right? We get the tears and tantrums and rage and so forth. And that can be triggering for many of us. You know, it's not always fun to hear that. It brings up our own issues sometimes. It can be hard to be present for our kids in those times. But what is helpful to remember is that this process, this offloading of feelings on your child's part, is really the very smartest thing that they can do. Like, this is how they innately know how to heal. Tears actually contain stress hormones. So it really does make all the sense in the world that when they're releasing these tears, that they are offloading some of the tension that they carry inside. And so what do we do, you know, as parents and caregivers to support this process? Parenting by Connection calls it stay listening. And that is literally being close to the child and listening. You know, we stay close, we pour in our love and attention. And this, you know, is a little different than, you know, your child releasing those stress hormones in a room, you know, by him or herself. You know, that's not really the same thing. That the connection is the key component. You know, so you're there while you're pouring in your love and connection. And when a child has the opportunity to offload all of that, offload all those feelings, to get through all of their tears, they then are able to get back to a place of flexibility, and their sunny disposition is restored. In our house, we do a lot of stay listening, but we also do it outside of the house too. And I'm just going to share a quick example of how stay listening looked for us a couple weeks ago. We were at my daughter's school's Spring Bazaar Festival, which happens every year, and my husband, who's right there behind the camera, was working the sound stage. And so Siona and I were wandering around, but we'd had a really hard week. It was a really busy week. My father had just moved out of his house that he'd been in for 33 years, and we were out there helping with that. You know, her sleep was affected, my sleep was affected. You know, it was a busy week at school, as it always is, but you know, she was tired. You know, she was tired by Saturday. And I was watching another kid in one part of the nursery yard, but I felt okay with her wandering off because there were friends nearby. And so she was out of my sight, and then suddenly my husband comes over with her just in tears, just sobbing, you know, and he had to kind of drop her off with me because he had to get back to the stage. And so I took her in my arms, you know, and another mom told me that an older child had accidentally run into her, and then she was disoriented and couldn't find me. And so that was literally like the emotional straw that broke the camel's back, you know, and she was just, yeah, sobbing, and she goes, you know, I want to get out of here. And I took that to mean that she wanted to get out of that little area because all these kids had collected around, you know, watching us. And so I found a little corner, and I sat down with her, and, you know, I had her in my lap, and she was facing me, and her head was just buried, you know, in my chest, and just sobbing. And, you know, I just had my hand on her back, and, you know, I'm right here. And I didn't say very much, you know. You don't really need to say too much, because then I wanted her to stay in her feelings space, you know, release the feelings, because we had time. You know, I had time. We don't always have time out there in the world to do that, but we had time. And if I said too much, you know, she would get back into that cognitive space. And I just wanted to take advantage of that opportunity to stay listen and support the feelings. So she sat there and crying, and every once in a while, like I tried to kind of, you know, get her head up a little bit so that she could look me in the eye, so that she could just see my support there, so she could see my warmth and kind of feel buoyed by that. And but you know, she just stayed with it and stayed with it, and I held her, and I don't know, it must have been about 5 or 8 minutes or so. I'm not sure how long it was. And then it slowed, you know, the sobbing slowed, and then finally it stopped. And just at that moment, a friend of hers came over, your son actually, and you know, he wanted to go on a tractor that was several feet away and wanted Siona to go with him, and she thought that that sounded like a good idea, and so that was that. And for the rest of the afternoon, she was so easy, like just so flexible and like just a pleasure to be around, you know, and it helped me too. Like I felt like it snapped me out of my little yucky zone, and she even, like she was so flexible that at the end of the day, there was, you know, the raffle that some of you know about, you know, which lasted like 45 minutes, super long, and she sat there right next to me the whole time, like waiting for her name to be called. It never got called, and she was fine with it, you know. It was like, wow. So, and I'm sure that was due to Stay Listening, you know. So, yeah, so that's pretty much it, you know, that's pretty much connection and Stay Listening. There's so much more, but that's it in a nutshell from my perspective right now. And there's so much more about these topics in the Listening to Children booklet set available from Hand in Hand Parenting. There are a few booklets that cover Stay Listening. And so yeah, there's a lot more information there. We've got an article here that gives some great resources and some information about the brain science kind of angle of it. So feel free to take a copy of that tonight too. There's a couple articles. And that's really, yeah, what I have for you. Does anybody have any questions about any of that, the connection?
The Stay Listening, so what if your kid, I'm not saying my kid would ever do this, but he started hitting you, like kind of like he started really getting physical, like he's crying, and then he just escalates higher and higher, and you're just sitting there, and then you're like, okay, you know, then you have to start setting these limits, and then he breaks the limits, and so it's no longer like a letting out thing. It's like you're in this effed up dynamic where you're like, and then it's like, So I don't know. I mean, do you just let him hit you? Do you let him like? I mean, do you let him? I mean, not really like where it's harming you, where it's kind of let him like act out to a certain degree physically, and then just try to block him or protect yourself?
Yeah,
or do you
need to keep your body safe, you know, and you can be clear about that. You know, I just need to hold you right now. I need to keep your body safe, and I need to make sure that, you know, I keep my body safe too. I know Christine has had some direct experience with this general topic. I don't know if do you want to?
Yeah. I do. I have direct experience with this. My little boy went through lots and lots of aggression. That's what got me to Hand in Hand to begin with. And so, you know, when my little boy with these tantrums, with this hitting out, it's like there's a lot of deep fear in children that are acting out, that are hitting, that are kicking, that are biting. It means there's a lot of deep fear. And every child, I mean, a lot of children have deep fear. And we don't have to know what it is, what the hurt is. It could have been all the way from in utero to their birth experience to an operation. We don't need to know what it is, but you know what you're dealing with, that you're dealing with a deep fear. So what you can do is he's needing something to push against, something to work against, to let this out. So when you're up against these situations, you know, if you can just wrap your mind around, I'm going to help my child. I get an opportunity to help my little boy let go of this fear that is just driving him to do this, right? So if you can wrap your head around that and look at it in a different way, and then you're just going, because you really need to be in a kind, loving, good attention space to deal with this. I used to get real, and I still get triggered, you know, and I have to do lots of listening around this because it takes me back to my childhood. And it's very triggering for me. So I have to do a lot of work. I keep my body safe, and I keep his body safe. And I'm not like holding him like, oh, like this, like I used to. When I wasn't using these tools, I'd hold him like I was so mad, you know. But now I hold him with kindness and love, and I let him push against me as much as he can, and I just say, I know, I'm sorry, it's hard. And I keep his body safe. I usually get down on the ground with him, and I move him so that his back is here, and I just keep him safe, and I let him work it all out. I give him enough playroom so that he can kick and hit and do what he needs to do to get these bad feelings out. And I say, I'm right here. You're safe. I love you. And the more you can just be in that good space for your child and let them just get it out, the more he has these really big cries and these really big releases, they will be smaller and smaller and smaller. You won't, it's not going to be forever, you know what I mean? Just my son needed a few really big cries, and now it's their little sessions. They're like 10-minute, 5-minute, could be 15, 20, it's rare now. But if you can just get through this hunk of fear that's stuck in him. And then you know, you can look at these things called special time and play listening. Lots of rough and tumble play with your little boy so that he can come at you and he can show you all his fears. You know, he can, and it's full body contact kind of roughhousing that really lets children build that safety to show you what they're feeling inside. And you just need to be in a really good place. And if you're not in a really good place, you could let him know that I'm so sorry, I can't listen to you right now, you know, because you really do. We don't want to add more hurts to our children. If I'm not in a good place and I can't handle it, I let him know, because otherwise I'm just adding more hurt onto him that he doesn't need, right? But does that kind of help you? Yeah? Yeah, okay, good.
You know, I think what we'll do, if